Nasty, expensive, and long, the U.S. presidential election campaign is over. Closure came a little after 10 p.m. local time in Chicago. Barack Obama returned to office despite the highest unemployment rate for a re-elected president since Franklin Roosevelt in the 1930s. In fact, even though the popular vote was close, Obama, though, in the end, not too far off the 365 electoral votes he garnered in 2008. Remember, we have yet to get the result from Florida, as you see the numbers there. Is it all a sign that Americans believe their fortunes have perhaps taken a turn for the better? Was it smart campaign tactics? Or did voters simply reject the alternative? Mitt Romney, caught between a centrist record as governor of Massachusetts and a hardline Republican base that incited him to tack right during the primaries. Now the question is, which way will the president tack? Faced with a divided Congress, will Obama advance with caution? Or, now that he no longer can be a candidate because of term limits, will the 44th president of the United States try to forge a more ambitious legacy? Today in the France 24 debate, 4 more years. And with us to talk about it, Stephen Erlanger of the New York Times, welcome. Christopher Dickey of Newsweek and the Daily Beast. Denis de Montpion of French Newsweekly, Le Nouvel Observateur, and France 24 business editor Stéphanie Antoine. Welcome to all of you. The France 24 debate, where you can always weigh in on the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us at François F24. Turnout was not as high as in 2008. In the end, though, Barack Obama did indeed get out the vote. Lines were long, the vote count was long, and it was well past midnight on the East Coast when the incumbent made his acceptance speech.
We are not as divided as our politics suggests. We're not as cynical as the pundits believe. We are greater than the sum of our individual ambitions, and we remain more than a collection of red states and blue states. We are and forever will be the United States of America. And together, with your help and God's grace, we will continue our journey forward and remind the world just why it is that we live in the greatest nation on earth. Thank you, America. God bless you.
All right, that's the mood in Chicago. Of course, it was a different story over in Boston, where we joined France 24's Philip Crowther. Philip, you heard Barack Obama, no blue states, no red states. But after a campaign with wall-to-wall negative advertising, what are the chances of Republicans, where you are, taking their cue from, well, we seem to be having technical issues, it seems, joining Philip Crowther. We'll try to fix that for you ASAP. Let's begin with you, Denis de Montpion. Your reaction to what Barack Obama said there, the tone of that speech.
Well, it's quite amazing to see that, he was fairly down still a week ago, and all of a sudden, he's boosted by victory. And we found, the Barack Obama we knew 4 years ago, thinking of the future, saying, he's more reasonable than in a way that he was 4 years ago, because he never spoke of victory, and he had in mind clearly, the fact that he would have to govern for, all American, Republican and Democrat, knowing fairly well that he hasn't got a clear majority in Congress, for sure.
Stephen Erlanger, is the excitement back when you look at the enthused crowd there in Chicago?
Well, it may be back for Obama. That was one of his best speeches in a long, long time. He's very good with a teleprompter. As we've learned, he's not very good in a debate. I think, we spent $6 billion to end up with a government very much like the one we had the day before. The difference is Obama has a renewed mandate. He doesn't have to get reelected again. And I think he can then go to the Republicans in Congress on the debt issue, offer them something real, and ask them to make a choice. And I think it's going to be a difficult choice for the Republicans. That's his first order of business, it would seem to me. But with the help of a reelection that at least is clear and solid, that makes me hopeful. The clarity is important.
Okay, so he has the popular vote. Do you agree that this gives him a stronger hand going into the tough negotiating that's ahead with Congress?
Well, I have to say that I don't think the record of the Republicans is one of wonderful cooperation with any Democratic administration in the last 20 years. I mean, we've looked back on the Clinton years and say, oh, well, this was just a model of bipartisan activity. It was so bipartisan that the Republicans impeached him and tried to convict him.
And shut down the government at one point.
Yeah, I mean, and shut down the government. I mean, how bipartisan was that? And I think that we really are running into a period now where the Republicans may decide, maybe out of vengeance, maybe out of political strategy, that they will make it so difficult for Obama that they will try to shut down the government, that they will push the country over the cliff.
All right, we can go to Boston now, and France 24's Philip Crowther. Philip, after a campaign that saw wall-to-wall negative advertising, what are the chances of Republicans taking their cue from Mitt Romney's conciliatory words in his concession speech?
Well, to be very honest with you, I think those chances are very slim indeed. We came into Election Day yesterday with the US President in the White House, with a House of Representatives controlled by Republicans, with a Senate controlled by Democrats, and we're pretty much exactly where we started after $6 billion wasted almost, spent at least on attack adverts, on one campaign attacking the other. And when you look at who the Republican leaders now are, well, they are the same ones they were before. It's John Boehner, the Speaker of the House. It's Mitch McConnell, the minority leader in the Senate. And it doesn't look like there will be any kind of partisanship for the moment. Now, what we'll look out for in Washington when we return and when the president returns a little bit later today is, might there be announcements of some meetings with these leaders from both houses? That might be a first start to see some kind of positive impact from what you're absolutely right was a positive speech, if you will, from Mitt Romney. The same kind of tones also from the US president coming in Chicago. And maybe one of the first things we might see is a meeting between the US president and Mitt Romney. That is something that was offered yesterday by Barack Obama in Chicago. Now, how much can that possibly change? Not too sure about that, because Mitt Romney now goes from Republican presidential candidate to, well, almost a nobody. Certainly won't be a leader in the Republican Party. The leaders are now, again, those that were there before in the House and in the Senate.
I was going to say, Philip, you're saying same cast of characters going into the next administration. Within the Republican Party, though, is it the start of soul searching, or are they all going to stay the course between those that are moderates and those that are closer to the Tea Party?
Well, I don't think all too much will change. When you mentioned the Tea Party, that is certainly an interesting thing to delve into. We saw very little impact of the Tea Party in this election, certainly a lot less as in the midterms 2 years ago, though you might suggest that certainly in the Republican primaries that did take so long, this very long process of Mitt Romney finally being chosen as the Republican presidential candidate, that there was a Tea Party influence that drove Mitt Romney further to the right, with the influence of the likes of Rick Santorum, for example, and of course Paul Ryan, the vice presidential candidate. He is a Tea Party favorite. There are certainly still elements of the Tea Party in Congress. There are still Tea Party voters around, but certainly not as strong as 2 years ago. So we're looking at, I would say personally, more of the same in Congress. It would be a great moment if they all got together. Bipartisanship is what everybody's hoping for, but the honest opinion from here is that is very unlikely indeed.
All right, thanks for that. Philip Crowther reporting there from Boston. Mitt Romney, again, with a conciliatory speech, but staying the course on his party's principles.
This election is over, but our principles endure. I believe that the principles upon which this nation was founded are the only sure guide to a resurgent economy and to renewed greatness.
So it sounds, listening to the whole panel, Stephanie, that we're headed really for 2 more years of gridlock at least.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. The thing is, they have actually to reach an agreement, the Congress and the administration, before the end of the year on what we call this fiscal cliff. Because if actually they don't reach an agreement, then you're going to have an automatic tax raise, which is going to be very big, and also an expense cut that's going to be around 4% of GDP, which means that you might have a depression in the United States. And actually, Christine Lagarde, the head of the IMF, warned Republicans and Democrats even yesterday, and she did a couple times, saying you need to find an agreement. Otherwise, you're going to have a depression in the U.S., and if there's a depression in the U.S., that means, you're going to have going to have a depression elsewhere.
And
So that's a lot of pressure, more than last year. They've been postponing this problem. Right now, it's really the last time before the end of this year they need to reach an agreement.
I was going to say, is this deadline helping to concentrate the minds?
I think so, even if it's still going to be difficult. Well, also Barack Obama has a new legitimacy, so that helps. Republicans are radicalized compared to before, so it's still going to be very difficult, and they'll probably reach an agreement, from my understanding, really at the last minute. But if they don't, the threat is really big for the U.S. economy and for the rest of the world. So.
All right. France 24's Nathan King is in New York. New York, where stocks are down. Nathan, Wall Street is dubious when it comes to whether or not an agreement can be reached to avoid this so-called fiscal cliff.
Yeah, although I must tell you, Francois, that stocks have run up massively in the last year under a Barack Obama administration, nearly hitting 14,000 on the Dow Jones, where they actually were at the beginning of the financial crisis. So I wouldn't read too much into sort of knee-jerk 300-point drop on the Dow just the day after President Obama's election. In fact, a lot of the news is being driven out of Europe. But I think you're right. The market is actually very much concerned about this fiscal cliff issue. And what actually I think is a positive thing is that a lame duck Congress has to deal with this. You know, Barack Obama in his impassioned speech last night talked about coming together, reaching out, no red America, no blue America, just the United States of America, saying that even when he doesn't agree with people, he listens, and it makes him a better president. And that was a very nice tone to have when you just got 300 electoral college votes where people thought you may not be re-elected. And I think this tone may translate, especially with the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, who is not a Tea Partier, to come to some sort of grand bargain, which they nearly did just over a year ago. Remember, these lame duck Congress has a little bit more freedom of maneuver. They've just been re-elected. They've got 2 years to sell it to their constituents. So I think Barack Obama hit that tone last night extremely well. He hasn't done well on the touchy-feely stuff in Congress over the last few years, and it seems like he was saying, look, I'm going to change a little bit.
All right, and of course, Nathan King was there in Chicago. I want to thank you, Nathan, for joining us. Just a reminder, our viewers, reaching across the aisle will, of course, come easier in the Senate, where the Democrats had a majority, an advantage that's even grown when you add the two independents of the next Congress that'll be coming in. There you see the outgoing Senate. We could show you now the images of the incoming Senate, where I think it's 53 Democrats and 2 independents, which I believe will caucus with the Democrats. In the House of Representatives, though, the Republicans continue to enjoy a comfortable majority. The House of Representatives, where they will have, something like a 30-seat majority. Interesting to hear about the lame duck Congress, Christopher Dickey, that maybe it's an opportunity.
Well, I think the real opportunity will come if the Republicans analyze their own defeat in such a way where they say the extremist positions that they took over the last couple of years didn't pay off for them. I mean, basically their electoral gamble was they could embarrass and humiliate Obama again and again, drive the country to the wall, everything would be blamed on him, and they would win the presidency. They did all that. They didn't win the presidency. They didn't win the Senate. And I think that people like Boehner are sick of this. So if you have a strong enough current within the Republican Party that's saying enough of this kind of tactic, then maybe there is room for a compromise.
But do you see that happening, Stephen Erlanger, when you see the way Tea Party candidates gave a pounding to more traditional Republicans in the primaries?
Well, I do think it's going to happen. It may not happen easily, and it may go to the very end. But I think the whole point of the fiscal cliff was designed to scare people into coming to a compromise. And now that the deadline is coming, it's pretty scary, much as you said. And I think if Obama can reach out and give the Republicans some of what they've been demanding, it'll make it very hard for them to simply shut the country down. I think Obama, by the way, is prepared to have the fiscal cliff happen, and he can blame it on them pretty easily. So I think it's going to be very, nasty. This is our politics, but in the end, no one wants to send the country spiraling back into recession and worse.
All right, Obama, by the way, ran a smart ground game on the campaign trail, getting millions of first-time voters to the polls. He also got a boost in the final weeks from an unlikely source, Hurricane Sandy, which once and for all halted Mitt Romney's momentum in the polls, with Obama, who you can see here touring with the governor of New Jersey, earning what looked strongly like an endorsement from Republican Chris Christie.
The cooperation from the President of the United States has been outstanding. He deserves great credit.
Denis de Montpion, that was a turn of event that a lot of people didn't expect.
Yeah, indeed, and that's why I was a bit surprised when I heard Christopher earlier on saying that he was very pessimistic because for the past 20 years they couldn't reach agreement between Republicans and Democrats. But the situation today it's quite different because there is pressure from everywhere, not only with the debt but from China, from the Middle East as well, and I think the American and Romney said it very clearly this morning when he mentioned that union should be there and they should work together in order to get America out of the recession.
Chris Christie, was he making his first move towards a campaign run in 2016?
He's a very shrewd politician. And I think that he wasn't comfortable with the Tea Party strain in the Republican Party, not least because he's the governor of a Democratic state. He's the Republican governor of a Democratic state. And he's famous for working with people like the mayor of Newark, Cory Booker, who's an up-and-coming Democrat. So he's a very interesting player, and he's clearly positioning himself for 2016 as a contender, as a moderate contender for the presidency, on the bet that the Tea Party strain will be dead by then. And you have to look at the Tea Party candidates, many of them sort of self-immolated in this campaign. I mean, you had two very prominent Tea Party candidates who made incredibly stupid remarks about rape and were miserably defeated at the polls, to which we say, good.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to pick up on the points that Denis de Montpion was making about what's on Barack Obama's plate for his second term. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.